It's going to be a liner lock with a thumb stud instead of a flipper tab. I know my blade has a little tab on it, but I'm just going to cut that off. This is 1/8 inch Damasteel stainless Damascus, and I think that's going to come out pretty cool. I think it's the Bifrost pattern, which is pretty neat. We'll find out anyway. I'm not sure about the bolsters yet. We'll figure something out. The first step is to get your little template on the metal so you can cut it out, figure out where things go, and so we'll go over to the bandsaw. We'll cut these things out real quick. Once we got these things cut out to the right, pretty much cut out. Now I just got to sand around the edges, try to shape this up a little bit, and then we're gonna knock the burrs off of that with the Scotch-Brite belt. We're just gonna take this roughness off the edges on this side. And we're gonna do it down here at the bottom. Make a folder. I think the most important thing is to get that pivot hole and that stop pin hole. It has to be in the exact right spot on both sides of this, and then the channel on this has to be, exactly right. So what I do is I have an optical center punch. You put that there, and that's why I draw this stuff out with my computer program, because it's just more accurate. And then you put this on here, and you put this little clear deal in here, and it has a little target. You line up the target, then you pull this out while you're holding this down, and you stick this in there. Then you smack that with a hammer, and your center punch comes out in the perfect right spot that you have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch this, punch that, drill those, and then I'm going to stick a pin in there, and then I'm going to spot these while both of these are pinned together. And I'm also going to spot these ones on the back so that I can mate these up, because a lot of times what will happen is you spot this one and you get it drilled, and then this thing looks like that. It looks like this, because I don't know why. It just does. So what I found to do is you stick a pin in here, and then you need to pin. You need to drill a hole back here so that you can at least pin that. Then drill it all. Then all the holes are in the right spot, and the thing doesn't move, and you're not going to end up with something that's crooked or messed up like that. So let me work on that, and then we'll go over to the drill press, and we'll or a milling machine, and we'll drill out some holes. A chuck with as little a run out as you can get. A lot of drill presses, they just wobble, and a lot of chucks you buy, especially those Chinese ones, they just wobble around in there, and so they don't make a round hole. And for this, you need round holes. And so I got a real good keyless chuck, but I also have some keyed chucks. One of the best ones I found is Jacob's ball bearing. It's a 14N. That thing, very little run out on that. But it's better if you can chuck it in a collet. If you can chuck things in a collet, it's a lot better because it's perfectly round to the column. You have pretty low run out on these. Probably a little more than this, but you have to get something that's fairly accurate. If you don't, you can't use a hand drill. So anyway, 11/64 on the drill bit, because we're going to drill this undersize, and then we're going to ream it. We're going to ream it with a 3/16 reamer after that, and that'll make a perfectly round hole, and it'll be exactly the right size. Now you can clamp this down. You don't have to, but you can. I've already spotted it, so it's going to sit in the middle. I did put a stop there so that if it catches, on this titanium, which is a little sticky, you know, that stop's going to keep it from whipping around and cutting your finger off or whatever. The little stop nut there, that's the one that'll save you. I forgot to mention that that's a carbide chucking reamer. It's carbide. The carbide ones cut better. They cut titanium better. They last longer. They're, you know, they're brittle. You know, if you put any lateral motion, they'll snap. But you know, you got to get something that's sharp. And those high-speed steel ones are just a pain in the ass. So anyway, just ream these out. Each piece. That thing will pretty much find the center of the hole that you just drilled. Has a little bevel on it, so it'll find the center. Okay, that's done. So all those are done. The problem so far was that when I bought the Damasteel, I didn't buy it wide enough. Because the stuff it costs so much per inch. You just can't buy these giant pieces, man. They cost a lot of money. So I was gonna just make this into like a thumb opener, right, with a little thumb stud there. But looking at it, I mean, there is a little piece there. I may be able to make a flipper out of this. I don't know, and have a thumb stud both. So I have to think about that. But that's why it's important to get this pivot pin in the exact right spot. Now I'm going to spot these other holes, and I'm going to drill these holes, but I'm not going to drill them the right size because these have to be tapped. This one has to be tapped, this one, and this one. And these two don't on this side, but they do on this side. They have to be tapped on this side. And this tap, and this is just a spot hole. That's one for the ball, the detent ball. But the detent ball is going to be on this side. So this one doesn't apply. This is where the cutout's going to be. And so what the deal here is now, I spot this stop pin on the blade, not on this thing. You spot it on the blade. This is just a pattern, right? So you spot it on the blade, and what I found is you have to spot it back a little bit from actually where it is. You don't want to go all the way to where it is. And the reason is because if you do, there won't be any play, and your blade will lock up like this, or your blade will lock up like that. And so you want it to be just back a little bit, so you may actually make a shorter track than it's supposed to be. And then you can kind of walk it in with your rotary table. You can walk in the mill into that stop pin so that it does stop in the spot where you want it to stop. That's the easiest way I've found. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I really need to take a class from somebody who knows what they're doing, and I'm going to. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. But this is the way I'm going to do it. So right now I'm just going to spot these holes, and I'm going to drill them all through. And I'm probably going to clamp these together and drill all these holes at the same time, because I want them in the exact same spot. And if you drill one and then you go back and spot it and then drill another, you know, that thing could be off, I mean, thousandths of an inch, but that makes a difference when you're trying to assemble the thing. So I'm going to try to keep the pairs together. Oh, geez, talking like Joe Biden here. Now that I've got all my holes marked out, I got a pivot pin in, and then I clamp these together on these 1, 2, 3 blocks, and I drilled one hole, and I put an old drill bit in that hole, and that keeps all the sides together. Now if I go ahead and drill all these holes, they'll be the same on the show side scale, or the show side liner and the outside liner. They'll be the same, in the same position. So that's going to be much easier to line up when I get the rest of it going. Here we are. I've got all my holes drilled except this stop pin hole. Here's the pivot that goes all the way through, and I pinned the back with a drill bit that goes in there, and then I have a little plate that I made out of, this is micarta, so I drilled a hole that's 3/16 of an inch for this pin to go into. Then I pin the back and hold that together, and I move this in 0.3175. Now for the smaller knife it's 0.270. Oh, sorry, 0.270 for the smaller knife. For the larger knife, the track is a little bigger, so it's gonna be a little farther out, so it's gonna be, you know, for all the mechanics for that thing to work. So what we're gonna do is we have a 7/64 right here, and we're just gonna drill both of these plates together. I mean, once you get one hole drilled, you can just tap the other one and sort of get the idea of where to shoot it. But all right. Okay. Then all I do is I come back into that with a 1/8 inch reamer and ream that hole out for the stop pin, and it all should be perfectly lined up where it is, hopefully. Anyway, we're gonna cut the track out for the stop pin, and you can see where I didn't drill those holes all the way to that line, because I want to use that line to fit as I drill this track or mill this track out. Then I'm gonna kiss that a little bit until this thing opens exactly where I want it to open and stops exactly where I want it to stop. And so the way I'm going to do that is you're going to stick it in this little jig, and then you're going to clamp the blade down, of course, and then you're going to mill this thing out. I've already set it to 0.3175, that's for the large knife. 0.270 is for the small knife, that's the track. And the I'm using a 9/64 carbide in mill to set the track, which is just a hair bigger than 1/8, so it shouldn't touch. But you know, I don't know. You don't need it. I make it much more complicated than it is. You really don't need that. A lot of people they don't have anything in here, and they just have something squared off, and the thing opens up, and the lock bar hits it, and it's done. But this is just much more complicated. This is the way I'm doing it. At some point, I may, I don't know, go to a simpler model or something. I don't know. But at some point, I'm also going to make a couple of different styles of knives too. So. But I'm gonna mill this out, and then we'll go from there. So once I got this track milled, now this thing opens just like I want it to. That's about as far up as I want it to go. Looks pretty straight. And then when it closes, it's gonna close, you know, just tip in, but I haven't really finished profiling that blade yet. But that's the way it works. And take this side off, and you can see where the pin, well, just fell out, but you can see where the pin stops it. The pin stops it right there, so it's stopped. See? And then when it closes, right, when it closes, the pin stops it right there. So that's going to be pretty good, I think. And I'll make a nice little backspacer for that. And it should come out pretty good. So that's one part of it done. Alright, these things need to be threaded. These are the bolster screws and the scale screws. They need to be threaded. This needs to be threaded. That holds the backspacers. And this head here is a tap-o-matic, so it taps the screw and then reverses and pulls, or taps the hole, pulls it back out. It just saves a lot of time and trouble. Here's how it works. That's how it works right there. And you just do that on every one of them. Things are a little pricey, but they're worth it. So here's where I got on this today so far. Is I've got it all. I've got, well, most of the bolsters are all shaped to the sides, and then stuck the blade in with the pin. That won't go in. There it goes. Okay, so that's how it's gonna close up. Put a washer on there. That's the show side outside, so that goes on there like that. Okay, now what you have to do is you have to figure out what is the stop pin's length. And the way you do that is you take the blade thickness and the two either bearings or washers, and you add those together, and also the liner thicknesses, because this is not going to protrude through the bolster. It's going to stop on the bolster, so that way it'll be hidden. I mean, I have the hollow ones you can put a screw in, but that's just extra pain in the where. So what I've got to do is I've got to do a little math, figure that out, and then turn that down on my lathe and to the right length, and then when that fits on, everything should line up. And then for the backspacer, it's going to be a piece of the Damasteel that I cut off the blade, and I'm going to put that in there. I think that'll look kind of neat, especially with Damasteel. So it'll sit in there like that. But I'll have to, well, the back of the Damasteel is all you're really going to see, so, but I hate to waste this stuff. So that's a good use for it, and it's the right thickness too, so I just have to put two little washers on each side to make the thing work right. So now we're shaping the bolsters. Try to anyway. These are the Damascus bolsters, and what we're going to do is, since these are 0.148 thick, we're going to cut that in half to about 0.075 and scribe a line here on this bolster. That way you're not going to get a thin piece, and you're not going to get a thick piece. As long as you just roll it over to that line, everything is going to come out the same. And it's a pretty handy little scriber that I made. But it'll work good for a template. So I'll grind that off. I'll roll those over and we'll see what it looks like. Alright, the bolsters are all shaped and rolled over. The elk antler just comes down and meets that. This isn't quite, it's not smooth, but I mean, I guess I call that a museum fit. So what I'm doing now is I have this side finished and these finished, and I quick etch these just to see what they look like, and they look pretty cool, so I might just leave it like that. But I need to get all this stuff even. So I'm going to work through my grits here and and sand that all down, make it nice and shiny. Then I'll take this apart and re-etch these, and then I've got the screws all cut to length, so they're fine. And then I might, and I probably will, is take the frame, which is titanium, and then I'll anodize that, maybe some kind of blue or a purple. I think if it's purple or blue, it'll go real well with these bolsters that I etched. They sort of, I etched them in my copper, so they came out a little bit of a copper, like a champagne tinge to them, so that looks kind of cool. The blade's going to be Damasteel, and the backspacer's going to be Damasteel, but I'm still trying to work out the etching on that, because so far I'm not impressed. But I'm going to call a friend of mine and talk to him about it, and we'll see if we can get it fixed. So I just got to work through my grids here. This is a 120. I'm going to go 120, 220, 400, 800, and then buff on the top, and that should be perfect. That's my next step. Getting this all fit up here, and I put on my backspacer, and I actually am going to drill another hole and have 3 little screws holding this on, because this thing seems to want to, sit at a tilt or something. But anyway, you can see right there, I think it might touch. So, but once I grind the blade, I'm going to double check that, and if I need to take a little bit off of there, I'll just take it off, and if I need to cut it back to there, I'll cut it back. But it's not going to touch on the tip, that's for sure. Looks like the only place where it's really gonna hit is right up here. And I kind of wanted that to be a long piece instead of just a short little thing, because it has such a cool design on it. I don't know if you can see it. My etching on this Damascus is not that good, but I haven't heat treated that yet, so maybe it'll get better once I do. But that's where I am so far. So I'm gonna drill that hole, tap it, make sure both sides fit, and then I put a little spacer in there, and I made a little spacer out of micarta that's going to go in here, and it's going to sort of float that backspacer in between those two. And this will be the same back up here as it is back here once I put spacers in, so it'll all be the same. Alright, now we're at the part where most of this is just fit and finish, and the problem that you're gonna have now is when you put the backspacer on, you got to have screws to hold it on there, or that goes through to hold the thing together. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to countersink these screw heads, because when you put your scale on there, see how much that needs to go in. So this is 735. You don't want to go more than half of that, let's say 350, and then it leaves you with 0.0385 technically, but it leaves you with 0.0385. So you've got to go down into this. You got to countersink this head 0.0385, and then once you do that, you're still going to have, I don't know, 210 left over. So you're going to have to countersink the back of this scale. You're going to have to countersink the head back here to 280 or about 210 to get the thing to fit flush. So like I say, a lot of this stuff that's why these things, they just take a lot of time to build. I guess there's guys that can whoop it out there, but I cannot. So I'm gonna work on this, and I'll come back when I'm done with that. Okay, in order to countersink this correctly, you have to find the center of that hole, and you could do it with a drill bit, or you could do it with a counter bore if your counter bore is the right size. So I mean, you could countersink these with the drill bit, but don't do it. You're just gonna mess it up. What you want to do is take one of these things here. It's called a counter bore, and it has a little tip on it. And this one's not carbide, this is high-speed steel, so I generally don't use it. I just use it for antler and wood and stuff like that. I don't get onto the metal with it because you'll dull these out, and they're really kind of hard to find. And they're kind of expensive. If you buy them in carbide, they're expensive. So what you want to do is you want to chuck this in your drill or mill or whatever you got. And I don't know if you want to, hear these things running or not. I don't know. That's why I was turning it off. I didn't know if you wanted to actually hear this. So then you put this thing down till it touches the metal and zero out your DRO. It really helps to have a DRO. If you don't, you're just guessing. You're just guessing what you're doing. Okay. Screw this down until you get back to zero. Alright. And what you can do, you can use this to start it, to start your hole. That's 0.5. That's 10. Okay. So that's 10. Okay, 10,000ths of an inch. And then what you can do is you can start your hole with that. And then you could switch to a carbide end mill, a flat end mill. You have to be careful with these though, because there's no tip on this. So what'll happen is it'll start wobbling all over the place, and it'll go berserk on you. So that's a good way to mess up the side of that. And I mean, I spent hours getting that thing right. Okay, so you just want to touch it, set your DRO to 0, and okay, and we took 10,000ths off, so we're gonna go 350 into this, so minus 10, 340. .034 or 35, I guess you could do. You could either do it by hand, or you could do it. There's 340. .345. So that's it right there. That's about the thickness you want. And then your screw head, actually you're going to have to probably turn that screw head down a little bit to get it to fit in that slot for this end mill. That end mill's not quite big enough, but pretty much the way you do it. So here's what I got today. It's I don't have the lock bar cut. That's the Backspacer. Top, side. I think I'm going to leave this a flipper. Once I get it all done, I think it's going to be okay. It's going to be a little flipper. But I think it looks pretty cool. One little part here is I got a little bit of space right in there where I didn't get those heads drilled deep enough. I'm going to have to go back in there and hit those. But, I think this is going to look okay if I can just get this Damascus blade to work out. I think it's going to be okay. Alright, I just finished cutting the lock bar, and you can see I cut it with a little Dremel disc. I also have a metal slitting saw, but these are just quicker and faster, and they just zip right through it. So that metal slitting saw, those blades are expensive, and it's just more of a hassle to set up. These things just zip right in there, cut it, and you're done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 15/16 carbide end mill, and I'm going to mill out a little slot right here. It's 77 thousandths thick, so it's 0.077, and I'm going to mill out about, I'm going to take about 40 off of that, 35 off of that. So I'm going to end up with, I don't know, 42 thousandths, and then that's going to be thin enough. Then I'm going to have to heat that up. I'll heat this part up right here, and then bend it over a little bit, and that'll create the tension on the lock bar. And then but I haven't released it yet. I haven't made the final cut at the front. So we'll see. When I get to that, then we'll have to drill it for the little detent ball and all that, and then I'll show you how I do all that. All right, cut out the lock bar, and I measured where this cut needs to be. And then what I did is I took a 25 thousandths little piece of feeler gauge, stuck it in there like that, and then I heated up the back of this relief cut, and that puts a sort of a bend onto the lock bar, the spring. You don't want that thing cranked over. I mean, a lot of people, they just way overdo it, crank it over like this. You don't need that. All you need that thing to do is when the ball comes off of that knife blade, then this thing will just pop over like that and just lock up. That's how you want it. So what I'm getting ready to do now is I've already sort of flattened off the flats here. I've got them nice and flat and shiny. And there's my detent hole that I drilled. And I'm going to take and wrap it up like I did this backspacer in a little foil packet. And this foil is that 2300 degree foil that you're going to need, because you're going to need to heat this up to 1950. So I'm getting ready to put this in the foil, put it in my oven, and I'll get it heat treated, and then we'll come back, and then we'll finish grinding all this stuff up, because I mean, I'm gonna go all the way back to here and grind it all up. But you heat treat it first, that way you don't come out with a super thin edge and then the thing warps and bends and everything else on you. This way it'll stay nice and flat when it's heat treated. So I'll come back and show you how I do that. Everything's ready to put together. I jeweled all the sides, and then I anodized everything, so just to give it some blingy look. So I'm ready to put this thing together. Let's see. This goes here like this. This is gonna go. I just sort of snug that up, and then this, I'm going to get a little bit of oil on it. Huh. That's weird. And then the washer goes on, and then we'll just sort of put little dots of oil on it. Just a little dot, that's all it really needs. And you need your pin and blade. Okay. Blade's on. Then you're gonna get your second washer. A little bit of oil. Just need a dot of this stuff. You don't need a ton. It's not gonna help it or hurt it. You don't want to flood it. Okay, cool enough. Alright, this is the backspacer with the little spacers that offset it. And the way I do that is I sort of set this thing on here, and then I use these nails to line it up. Try to line up a couple of these holes. Yeah, like this. So you line up a couple holes, and you kind of line up the back hole. Okay. Screw goes in here. You sort of have to do this to each one, where you're just trying to fish around in there and start that screw. I'm not too sure about the blue liners. I think I'm going to leave them blue. I anodized them, and you know, they came out pretty cool looking, but I don't know how it's going to look when I get it all together. Okay. Then I leave these loose, little loose, and then this will make sure that's sitting down in there. This is the front bolster. Hope my hand's not in the way, which I think it probably is. So we'll leave that loose. Put that screw head in there. And just snug that down. See, that looks kind of cool. Alright, so now that that screw head is in there, I'll tighten that down. Tighten the other one down. And this is the show side scale. And everything fits together good. Okay. This is the outside scale. Everything is countersinked, all the screws are the right length. Come on. Okay. You don't want to kill them and crank them down and over tighten them. Okay, so now I take a couple of pieces of liner and stick it in here, and then I take a little screw head and tighten that down, pull those out. Okay. Tighten that down a little more. Okay, so there it is. So there's what it looks like. Snaps right on open. Looks pretty good. Pretty good to me. Closes down. Looks pretty good to me. You know, you gotta hit it for it to come open. You know, I haven't opened it that many times. Well, just 2 or 3 times now. But, you know, it pops right open. You know. So I think that's pretty cool. So there's the front side. There's the backspacer. Sort of in between the blue. That looks kind of cool. There's the other side. Looks kind of neat. There's the closed side, and the blade has all the everything on it.
And you can see the Damasteel pattern. Just depends. I think it looks cool. Okay, we're there. It's done. Alright, here's the finished knife. Sliced my finger open on this stupid thing. Not going to charge you extra for that though. So here it is. It has Damascus that I etched in copper, elk antler, Damasteel blade, titanium pivots, screws. Backspacer is also Damasteel, and the sides are anodized titanium. And there's the other side. There it is. Locks up nicely. There's the blade and the whole knife. A little bit of sun coming through there. So hope you like that. I think it came out pretty sweet. First time working with Damasteel. I guess it's you know, okay. Have to be careful with that blade, and that thing is sharp. I shouldn't have sharpened it before I took these pictures, and I hurt myself. So that's what it looks like, and that's what it that's how it is. So hope you like it.